What are the effects for individual and organisational health from work-related stress? Psychosocial hazards are, according to Cox and Griffiths in 2005, those aspects of work design and the organisation and management of work and their social and environmental contexts, which have the potential for causing psychological, social, or physical harm. These hazards can lead to negative health outcomes. Most research on stress and work is cross-sectional, so completed at one point in time, meaning we have an understanding of an association between a health outcome and stress, but no causal relationship understanding. High levels of stress can impair workers' performance and result in negative behavioural and attitudinal work outcomes. Jill Bower, 2008. Of interest, recent studies have shown that chronic work pressure conduces a feeling of overconsumption of energy that undermines well-being. It occurs when job-relevant personal resources are constantly exceeded by work demands. Urian, 2012. There are, though, several pieces of research which aim to investigate the link between stress and health. In terms of individual health, Ferry et al. 2002 found that among civil servants, psychiatric disorders were associated with stress when brought about via the stress model of effort-reward imbalance and the job demand social support model. Stanifeld and Candy in 2006 also looked at individual psychological effects. They completed a meta-analysis of 11 longitudinal studies. This analysis suggested that job strain, low decision latitude, low social support, high psychosocial demands, effort-reward imbalance, and high job insecurity predicted common mental disorders. The strongest effects were found for job strain and effort-reward imbalance. The individual physical outcomes include links between coronary health and negative outcomes for both effort-reward imbalance and job demand control issues. Cooper et al. In 2002 found high effort and low reward increased the likelihood of chronic health disorders by a third when compared to low effort and high reward. Kivimaki et al. In 2006 meanwhile completed a meta-analysis reviewing this chronic health disorders link. In this meta-analysis, different theories were examined. 14 prospective cohort studies were identified for a total of 83,014 employees. The age and gender adjusted relative ratio for chronic health disorders for high versus low job strain was 1.43, but the ratio decreased to 1.16 after adjustment for risk factors and potential mediators. The age and gender adjusted risk ratio for a combination of high efforts and low rewards was 1.58 for 11,528 employees. There was no reduction in the risk ratio when was seen after further adjustments. For organisational justice, the age and gender adjusted and multiple adjusted relative risks were 1.62 and 1.47 respectively, for a population of 7,246. The conclusion was that observational data suggests an average 50% excess risk for chronic health disorders among employees with work stress, although there is more research needed to confirm that a reduction in work stress will lead to a reduction in chronic health disorder risk. A link has also been found between stress and participating in behaviours which create a health risk for oneself. For instance, Segrist and Rodel in 2006 reviewed 46 studies on the relationship between work-related stress and health risk behaviours. The strongest relationship concerns stress and alcohol consumption in men, and weight, suggesting how stress can lead to other risky behaviours, which can cause an array of health defects. Gavonen et al. In 2007 found that after adjustment for age, socioeconomic position, marital status, and type of job contract, women and men with high ecological effort-reward imbalance were 40% more likely to have simultaneously 3 lifestyle risk factors compared with their counterparts with low effort-reward imbalance. When examined separately, both low ecological effort and low ecological rewards were also associated with an elevated prevalence of risk factor co-occurrence. The results obtained with the individual level scores were in the same direction. The associations of ecological effort-reward imbalance with single risk factors were generally less marked than the associations with the co-occurrence of risk factors. Greep et al. In 2015 found in a sample of Brazilian civil servants with sample sizes above 10,000 that among men, compared with low strain activities, i.e. low demand and high control, job strain showed an association with physical inactivity, and among women there was a greater likelihood of physical inactivity among job strain and passive job groups. Greater control was therefore a protective factor for physical inactivity among both men and women, and social support was also a protective factor for physical inactivity among women and was a protective factor against smoking for both genders. There was no association between demand or control dimensions and smoking. Hikikila et al. In 2014 examined the associations of job strain, which is an indicator of work-related stress, with overall unhealthy and healthy lifestyles. The meta-analysis of 11 cross-sectional studies with a sample of 118,701 found that individuals with job strain were more likely than those with no job strain to have 4 unhealthy lifestyle factors, and less likely to have 4 healthy lifestyle factors. The odds of adopting a healthy lifestyle during study follow-up were lower among individuals with high job strain than among those with low job strain. Therefore, work-related stress is associated with unhealthy lifestyles, and the absence of stress is associated with healthy lifestyles. Although the longitudinal analyses suggested no straightforward cause-effect relationship between work-related stress and lifestyle. This relationship between individual health outcomes and stress is, however, suggested to be moderated by various variables. Cooper, Driscoll in 2001 divided these potential moderating variables into 3 types of variable: dispositional variables, situational variables, and social variables. Barksey et al. In 2004 suggested how negative affectivity has an impact on the stressor-to-strain relationship. Negative affectivity represents pervasive differences in both self-concept and in the predisposition to experience negative or aversive emotional or mood states. This is suggested by Barksey to influence the stress-strain relationship in 5 different ways. The findings from Barksey's study were indeed that the best-fitting moderating relationship was different depending on the strain. They found for job satisfaction, stressors had an influence on job satisfaction, but that negative affectivity had an influence on both stressors and job satisfaction. For life satisfaction, they found that same relationship. However, for turnover intentions, they found that negative affectivity had an influence on the stressor, and that the stressor had an influence on turnover intentions, rather than there being a relationship between turnover intentions and negative affectivity. Meanwhile, for depression, they found there to be a relationship between negative affectivity and stressors, and negative affectivity and depression, but not a direct relationship between stressors and depression. Some of the negative outcomes for organisations which may arise because of stress include absence, morale, intentions to leave and intentions to retire, and productivity. In terms of absence, there can be a significant effect as a result of this. The CIPD, for example, found in 2007 that in a survey of 819 UK-based HR professionals, 40% of employers reported an increase in stress-related absence in the last 12 months. In a study using the Whitehall civil service data, Stansfeld et al. In 1997 found that 10,000 civil servants assessed for psychosocial hazard exposures, which used the Karaset questionnaire, so it's based on the Job Demand Control Theorem, and GHQ scores, and again 4 years later. With these civil servants, high work, social support, and high skill desertion were protective against taking short spells of psychiatric sickness absence. Therefore, the conclusion is that social support and control at work protect mental health and control absence. There is also evidence for longitudinal studies. Ruelen et al. In 2007, on 247 male employees who worked in cheese factory and insurance companies, did a 12-month prospective study, found that psychological job demands did not predict short-duration absence. Psychological job demands did predict longer absence and the number of health complaints. Darren Johns in 2008 completed a meta-analysis of 153 studies. Meanwhile, Michi and Williams in 2003 completed a review of 49 studies. They found that key work factors associated with psychological ill health and sickness absence were long hours worked, work overload and pressure, and the effects of these on personal lives, the lack of control over work, the lack of participation in decision-making, and poor social support and unclear management and work role. The successful interventions used included training and organisational approaches to increase participation in decision-making, problem-solving, and increase support and feedback, and improved communication, suggesting the importance of these roles in the relationship. Absence may not be the biggest concern when it comes to illness. Collins et al. In 2005 found that the cost due to workers being present but not working at full capacity as a result of them being ill was more costly for organisations than absenteeism. According to Towers-Watson's Global Benefits Attitude Survey of 2014, levels of workplace disengagement significantly increase when employees experience high levels of stress. The research shows that of those employees who claim to be experiencing high stress levels, 57% also reported that they were disengaged, whilst only 10% of employees claiming low stress levels said they were disengaged, and half of this group claimed to be highly engaged. This was a survey of 22,347 people across 12 countries, suggesting it was a survey with real generalisability, although there were issues with the self-report nature of it. In regards to early retirement intentions, a cross-sectional study by Khan et al. In 2018 found a link between psychosocial pressures and early retirement intentions among NH workers, although burnout was found to play a mediating role in this relationship. So just as there are mediators which impact on individual health, there are mediators which impact upon the relationship between stress and individual actions which will have a negative impact on the organisation. Tisner et al. In 2015 found among hospital physicians that burnout partially mediated between work stress and work satisfaction, and work satisfaction partially mediated the relationship between burnout and turnover intentions, suggesting further mediators in the relationship. Nonetheless, it still provides evidence for the implication that stress leads to turnover. The study did not find a directly significant link between stress and turnover intentions, although this is explained by the authors to be due to the characteristics of the Israeli physicians' work environment. The number of hospitals in Israel is limited, and doctors realise that employment conditions in all hospitals are similar. Some studies have found weak correlations between work stress and turnover intentions, such as Bean-Dian and Armenakis in 1981, but most of the results are for a significant relationship between the variables. Goodman and Boss, 2002, Moreno-Jimenez et al., 2012. Burnout, as it increases, has been shown to result in lower work satisfaction and subsequently increased levels of turnover intentions. Cropenzano et al., 2013. There is much research on workplace stress in the health industry, in particular on the relationship between workplace stress and job satisfaction. McGowan in 2001 confirmed the negative impact of nurses' stress on job satisfaction, although only the perceived lack of organisational support and involvement proved to be the most significant stressor. In a similar vein, nurses who succeeded in coping with stress were related to higher levels of job satisfaction, suggesting that workplace stress can have a more nuanced role, with being possible to mitigate its effects. Golbassi, 2008. To add to this nuance, Draper et al. In 2004 identified a significant positive correlation between satisfaction and stress, suggesting that stress may not have as clear-cut a relationship as some people expect. Although these results may be due to the operationalisation of stress, and indeed the nature of the samples being students for whom stress may have a differing effect than the more experienced colleagues who may have experienced more burnout. In general, literature in the field suggests stress to affect job satisfaction. For instance, Blegan's 1993 meta-analysis confirmed that occupational stress is a major factor related to job satisfaction of nurses. Indeed, many researchers reported a negative relationship between work stress and job satisfaction across a variety of cultures. Healy 2000, Liu et al. 2007, Stewart 1994. Indeed, these studies explored nurses in these many cultures, suggesting that it is a cross-cultural phenomenon, which further helps to explain a clear biological link between work-related stress and negative consequences. There's particular issues for role ambiguity and role conflict, which can lead to increased employees' absenteeism and frequent work delays, and increases in employee turnover and reduced workforce productivity, Judah 2011. Indeed, the investigation into productivity was further done by George in 2008. In a study using a random sample of 425 employees in the private and public sector, these participants were investigated in terms of the effects of stress and job satisfaction on the functioning of a company. Factor analysis was used first in order to identify the responsible factors for the correlation among a large number of qualitative and quantitative variables and their influence on productivity. The extracted factors showed that productivity is an element affected by the two qualitative factors, stress and satisfaction. Increased stress leads to reduced productivity, and increased satisfaction leads to increased productivity. There was also organisational health effects, which came about as a result of work-related stress. In general, job satisfaction is also an issue, with work-related stress resulting from stressors such as higher workloads, as well as staff issues, including lack of resources, have been found to be associated with poor job satisfaction. Graham et al., 2011. It would be wrong to separate individual and occupational health outcomes as though they are separate, as indeed burnout, which is a progressive psychological response to chronic work stress involving emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and feelings of reduced personal accomplishment, Maslach and Jackson 1981, can influence both. Indeed, studies have shown that for doctors, burnout is an occupational disease that impairs both quality of healthcare and physicians' health, and it is associated with medical malpractice. Chen et al., 2013. Emotional distress, absenteeism, reduction in personal effectiveness, and increased risk of health problems. Kushmer and Cohen, 2006. De Spiegelare et al. In 2014 studied this question, building on the Karasik model, suggesting that employees in jobs with high autonomy and time pressure will be more engaged and more innovative. The results of the multi-level regression analysis confirmed that such a combination is associated with high employee innovation. For work engagement, the job autonomy helps in buffering the negative effects of time pressure. This suggests that if this particular stress model is subscribed to, the high-demand jobs are not producing of stress so long as they are combined with high control, and they can actually lead to positive results, such as that found in this study. The implication of this study is that if the jobs become more stressful, then the positives observed in the study would not be achieved. It should be noted how the style of studies in terms of conceptualization of stress can be influential in terms of what is being measured when the study establishes a link between stress. There are many different theories in the field of workplace stress which say different things about what workplace stress will be. For instance, the same situation can be regarded as a stressful situation under Karasik's model but not under Segrist's model. Therefore, it is possible that what is measured in a study may not actually be the same thing as in other studies, and that the relationship found between a negative health outcome and stress may not, in actual fact, be the relationship that is proposed. There are also points to consider in regards to interventions. The aim is to reduce workplace stress in order to reduce the potential effects outlined in this essay. However, when it is hard to establish the full role of moderation, what exactly is meant by stress, it can be hard to implement particular interventions. This essay shall discuss the various ways in which work is changing and the implications of these change. One way it is changing is through teleworking. Teleworking is defined by Gray in 1995 as a flexible way of working, which covers a wide range of work activities, all of which entail working remotely from an employer or from a traditional place of work for a significant proportion of working time. The work often involves electronic processing of information and always involves using telecommunications to keep the remote employer and employee in contact with each other. In 2007, the fourth European Working Conditions Survey included a question on teleworking. The results suggested that a significant proportion of workers did not telework, although there was variation by sector. No sector had more than 15% of people sometime teleworking, and no sector had more than 5% always teleworking. For the UK, 8.1% teleworked at least a quarter of the time, and 2.5% teleworked almost all the time. A total of 59% of employers who responded to a CBI survey in 2011 were offering teleworking, up from 13% in 2006. 2013 TUC figures show it's most common among older people, with 1 in 5 workers aged over 55 regularly working from home. These figures clearly show teleworking to be an increasing phenomenon. The implications, of teleworking, are varied. Montrelieu and Lippel in 2003 suggested that the positive effects included that stress levels could be lower as a result of not having to commute and having control over the work environment. However, they also identified that there are problems, one being isolation, which was related to social and work-related communications. This could, however, be remedied through splitting time between home and office, establishing a teleworker network. Also found was lack of support, particularly technical support, although this could be remedied through phone support being extended to teleworkers. IT equipment to be of the same standard as that available in the office. In addition, there was a lack of escape from work. Work is accessible 24/7, although this could be remedied by the worker themselves by introducing an activity that would mark the end of the day. Another issue is that the worker is less visible, and that they may get overlooked for promotion, etc. This could be remedied through visiting the office to maintain profile, however it is worth noting that this particular method of remediation does somewhat defeat the purpose of teleworking. Hartig et al. In 2007 looked at the stress effects of teleworking by investigating what impact it had on the restorative value of the home. They found that more teleworking was linked to the home becoming less restorative among a sample of 101 Swedish government employees. It was found that if a separate room was used for work, work was separated from home life, but that this separation was not achieved mentally. Ertel, Pesch, and Ulsberger in 2001 meanwhile looked at freelance media workers, 210 of them. They found the workers to find there to be a lack of feedback on whether they were doing a good job. It was also established that the average working week of 47 hours was 25% worked more than 60 hours per week, and that this high quantity of work was related to a lack of ability to relax, as well as high psychological demands and work interfering with private life. These relationships were shown to increase as and when the quantity of working hours that was being completed increased. It should be noted that the sample includes a somewhat unique set of workers, though, and therefore the applicability of the findings to other workers may be limited. Peach and Ulsberger in 2004 did, however, find an instance where teleworking was successful. They observed teleworking in a pension insurance company, and they found that if the individual worker had adequate skills to perform the job, support by their partner and/or external childcare, good self-management skills, and a good relationship with management, then this was likely to facilitate a successful teleworking incident. It was also found that successful teleworking could be facilitated through the organisation having a management style based on trust and being results-orientated, there being social support by management as well as a social climate that is supportive of teleworking, and there being possibilities for alternative teleworking arrangements. In a systematic review, Charlalumpus et al. In 2018 found some strong evidence for a positive relationship between teleworking and well-being at work. More explicitly, teleworking was found to associate with individual positive emotions, to increase their job satisfaction and organisational commitment levels, and to ameliorate feelings of emotional exhaustion. Additionally, when it comes to professional well-being, teleworkers were found to be more autonomous as a result of this working arrangement. Some nuanced findings were presented in relation to social relationships within a teleworking population, as although social isolation has been repeatedly identified as one of the main drawbacks of teleworking, Bailey and Kurland in 2002, this review showed ways in which workers could mitigate these effects. The limitation is that the review, like many other studies, excludes specific working populations such as self-employed and disabled employees. Whereas this enables better comparability of the obtained studies in the meta-analysis, it does make it unclear how teleworking links to these employees' well-being at work. Research has suggested that office-based employees experience greater work-family conflict when their colleagues were absent from the office, Lautush et al. 2009. Thus it is imperative for future research to explore if the change of the social milieu of the traditional office may occasionally improve the well-being of a few teleworkers at the expense of the normal office-based workers. To fully understand this, these effects of teleworking, more research needs to be done. Another change to the world of work is through technological advancements. There are a host of technological advancements that have revolutionised the world of work. This has always been the case, going back to the printing press, and will continue to be the case, with future advancements to come which are impossible to conceptualise today. An example of a relatively recent revolution in which there's been some research is that of smartphones. Smartphones are mobile phones in which the internet can be accessed, and are used both by people at home in their personal life and at work. For many, they will use the same home phone for both, and for those who have separate phones, it is likely for many that they will be able to access work content on their home mobile number. A key type of person who will not be able to do this is one where the work that they do is confidential. For instance, a psychologist working in a prison will have confidential information on patients which they will utilise in their work. However, they not be able to access this information at home, as it is confidential and cannot be accessed away from work. Therefore, the influences of smartphones on revolutionising work-life balance is likely to be impeded for these particular types of workers. In terms of research on the effects of smartphone interference, Dirks et al. In 2014 completed a 4-day quantitative diary study which investigated the relationship between daily smartphone use and daily work-home interference. The study found that supervisors should be clear about their expectations regarding smartphone use in private hours. Meanwhile, Dirks et al. In 2015 also investigated smartphone use and recovery, and found that work-home interference was positively related to psychological detachment, relaxation, mastery, and control activities, whereas smartphone users facing high work interference did not succeed in engaging in these recovery activities. Work-home interference and its respective merits and drawbacks is a key issue, with prevalent use of smartphones, and has been both praised and criticised for blurring the boundaries between work and family life, Falcor and Hunter 2005. Matusish and Mikhail in 2011 showed that smartphone users have to deal with the complex interplay between demands and expectations to balance and manage their responsibilities in both work and personal life, suggesting the potential damaging implications of the smartphone. And indeed, smartphone use has been shown to come along with expectations for faster reaction times to work-related communications, increasing the time spent working once employees leave their workplace. Milikson and Jensen 2005. Towers 2006. Psychological detachment is an experience of leaving one's work behind when returning home from work. It means to disengage oneself mentally from work while not being at the workplace. Sonntag and Fritz 2007. Low detachment from one's job during off time activates neuroendocrine and cardiovascular systems. Broshot 2006. Prolonged activation and continued preoccupation with job-related problems and thoughts drain energy resources and increase negative affect. Thompson 2006. Not detaching from work and keeping to think about job-related issues after work also reduces the likelihood of becoming immersed fully in family or leisure time experiences. Isles et al. 2007. As smartphones limit one's capacity to have psychological detachment, therefore they can be quite problematic. A possible relation was shown between sectation norm and psychological detachment with this. This implies that employees who perceive other people at work practicing clear boundaries between work and home domains reported higher levels of psychological detachment from work outside regular hours than employees who perceive the norm as high on integration. In addition, the perceived segmentation norm was related to less technology use at home. Park et al. 2011. Kreiner in 2006 argued that organisations might differ in what they expect regarding the availability during after-work hours. It was showed that in organisations where employees could mentally leave their work behind when they went home, employees experienced less work-home interference than in organisations where employees were expected to be available for work issues during even hours. Work engagement may buffer the smartphone's impact on work-home interference, with those who are engaged likely to feel less effects from using their smartphones in evenings. Although Sonntag et al. In 2008 found that work engagement moderated the relationship between psychological detachment and positive affect. These findings suggest that both engagement when being at work and disengagement when being away from work are most beneficial for employees' affective states. There is a clearly important role for psychological detachment, though. Erlemans in 2014 found employees who enjoyed being engaged in work-related activities during evening hours experienced higher levels of energy and recovery at bedtime compared with those who did not enjoy the work-related activities. In line with this finding, it can be expected that engaged employees who see work as a positive experience have less problems in terms of recovery, and probably also work-home interference, showing a clear role for individual differences in moderating the smartphone to work-home interference relationship. Part of the ability for those with work engagement to experience less negative effects to work-home interference is through activation level. Baker in 2014 showed that engaged employees succeed in reducing their high activation level during after-work hours, resulting in mental disengagement from job-related thoughts and activities during the evening. Indeed, research suggests that engaged workers are able to stop working and engage in other activities during off time, including social activities and hobbies. Baker et al. 2013. For example, Kunal et al. In 2009 showed that engagement at work and disengagement from work during off time are positively related, and in another study, 10 et al. In 2012 showed that daily relaxation and psychological detachment from work while being at home coincides with daily engagement at work. There are future research needs on the changing world of work. There needs to be a greater focus on the changing workplace for employees at the lower end of the organisational hierarchy, as many research investigations for employee well-being are conducted at the managerial level. There needs to be more research investigating the long-term health effects of sedentary work, as well as more research on the increased use of new technology and robotics in the workplace. And in addition, the workplace is becoming increasingly culturally diverse. Organisations need to be fully aware of cultural differences in work values, dress code and religion, together with the potential problems that this change in the world of work can have on communication.